Okay, important alcohol. We have methyl alcohol. This is the simplest alcohol. It is colorless liquid. It can be used for combustion engines. And other term for methyl alcohol is wood alcohol. Kasi yung mga naunang methyl alcohol has been synthesized through fermentation of wood. Okay? Drinking methyl alcohol is very dangerous because once this enters the human body, it could be oxidized by the liver enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase. So that's the enzyme. Kino-convert niya that methyl alcohol into formaldehyde. Okay? So with alcohol dehydrogenase in the liver in as a liver enzyme, it could be oxidized into formaldehyde wherein the hydroxyl group will be converted into a carbonyl group. Okay? So formaldehyde causes blindness. It could either be temporary or permanent. So mabubulag ka kapag uminom ka ng methyl alcohol. Also, further oxidation could happen for this ingested methyl alcohol, and it will then become a formic acid. Okay, so further oxidation will cause the formaldehyde to become formic acid by turning the carbonyl group into a carboxyl group. So this is carbonyl, originally hydroxyl siya, naging carbonyl, and then further oxidized to carboxyl group. Okay? This formic acid could cause acidosis, wherein there's an imbalance of pH in your body, and it could damage the optic nerve. So never drink methyl alcohol. Next important alcohol is the ethyl alcohol, and these are referred to as the alcoholic beverages. So or the alcohol present in alcoholic beverages. So ito yung mga present sa mga beer, wine, rum, and other alcoholic beverages. They are simply called drinking alcohol kasi ito yung safe to be consumed by humans but at a certain concentration, of course. They are produced by yeast fermentation of sugar, and since these sugar are obtained from grains, they are ethyl alcohol are also referred to as grain alcohol. Okay, so we have the glucose in the sugar to be C6H12O6. With yeast fermentation, it will now produce ethyl alcohol and a side product of carbon dioxide. So this one is the one being observed kapag nagpo-ferment kayo, yung bubbling. So the gas being expelled is eventually the carbon dioxide. So ethyl alcohol will have two carbon atoms with the hydroxyl group as its functional group. Okay? So just like methyl alcohol, ethyl alcohol is being oxidized in human body by the liver enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase. However, this time, ethyl alcohol, so this is ethyl alcohol, will be converted or oxidized into acetaldehyde. So kung kanina sa methyl alcohol, it was oxidized to formaldehyde and formic acid, ethyl alcohol will be oxidized in the body into an acetaldehyde and further oxidized into an acetic acid. So acetaldehyde is largely responsible for your hangover. Still, the hydroxyl group, once oxidized, will become carbonyl group, and further oxidation will cause it to become a carboxyl group. Okay? The maximum concentration for ethyl alcohol obtained via fermentation is just 18% volume per volume. So, this is because hindi na siya pwedeng umabot ng higher concentration because the enzyme cannot function in a stronger alcohol solutions or alcoholic environment. So, kapag tumaas pa yung concentration ng alcohol within the product being fermented, syempre, mamamatay na yung enzyme kasi it could not tolerate the alcoholic environment. So hanggang 18% lang yan. So paano nila pinapataas yung concentration ng mga alcoholic beverages? It could be either by distillation. So i-concentrate nila, they're going to remove the water or they're going to separate water from the alcohol via distillation, or it could be via fortification, wherein they're going to add um, alcohol to that obtained product via distillation. Okay. We also have denatured alcohol. These are specifically ethyl alcohol that are unfit to drink, that are rendered unfit to drink. Bakit sila naging unfit to drink? Akala ko ba ethyl alcohol are drinking alcohol? Okay? Denatured alcohol had been rendered unfit to drink because a small amount of toxic substances has been added. So these toxic substances are known as denaturing agents. So yung natural properties ng ethanol that it could be a drinking alcohol has been denatured by these toxic substances. So hindi na siya pwede sa consumption ng human beings. Rather, itong denatured alcohol na to ginagamit yan sa industries as raw materials for the production of other chemicals or products. We also have absolute alcohol. So, ano pinagkaiba kay denatured? Denatured, meron siyang kasamang small amount of toxic substances so that it could be unfit to drink. And absolute alcohol, these are pure alcohol that contains less than 1% of water. So, meron pa rin siyang water, pero less than 1% na. And these traces of water has been removed by treating the alcohol with dehydrating agent. So, kung kanina sa denaturing, meron tayong denaturing agent, sa denatured rather, sa denatured meron tayong denaturing, sa absolute alcohol, naglagay naman sila ng dehydrating agent to remove the excess water. So another important alcohol is the isopropyl alcohol, or an IUPAC name of 2-propanol. These are 70%, this isopropyl alcohol of concentration 70% isopropyl are considered as rubbing alcohol. So, yung mga rubbing alcohol natin, may 70% alcohol sila, particularly isopropyl, and 30% water. They are used as disinfectant. Okay, so panglinis ng mga surfaces or ng mga kamay ngayon sa ngayong COVID. Okay, sa mga the toxicity of isopropyl alcohol is twice that of the ethyl alcohol. Kanya lang, konti lang daw ang fatalities ng mga nakaka-ingest ng isopropyl kasi nga, once you had taken isopropyl alcohol, this will induce vomiting. And with that, kapag naisuka mo yung na-ingested na isopropyl alcohol, of course, it could no longer stay within your body and of course, konti na lang yung ma-oxidize. Nevertheless, mag-undergo pa rin siya ng yung mga na-ingested isopropyl alcohol, mag-undergo pa rin ng oxidation reaction and they will turn into acetone. Okay, so still, oxidation is caused by oxidation is possible because of the alcohol dehydrogenase present in the body. Okay, so ganun pa rin, the hydroxyl group in the alcohol will be oxidized to become carbonyl group. Okay? If you're going to ingest a large amount of isopropyl, of course, this could be fatal. Kahit nasabi kanina, pag konti lang, it will induce vomiting. And of course, acetone is not rather is fatal pa rin. Pero kapag sobrang dami na in-ingest mo, of course, this could lead to death. And paralysis of your central nervous system. Okay, next important alcohol are the ethylene glycol or 1,2 ethane diol. So dalawa ang hydroxyl group attached to the parent chain, and we have propylene glycol or that is 1,2 propane diol. Okay, so these are the two simplest glycols. They are colorless, odorless, and high boiling liquids. Okay, they are used as an antifreeze for yung mga may mga snow na countries. They are going to use this glycol para hindi mag-freeze yung mga water nila doon. Okay, so this is extremely toxic, and it could be, once ingested, this could be converted into oxalic acid. Of course, oxalic acid will cause renal problems once it crystallizes in the kidneys. So, hindi pwedeng ma-ingest ang mga antifreeze, ethylene glycol, and propylene glycol. Okay? So, so ethylene glycol only. But for propylene glycol, this is actually non-toxic. So non-toxic si propylene glycol because it has been used as a solvent for drugs. It could be oxidized, still oxidized by the liver enzyme into pyruvic acid. However, pyruvic acid is normally found in the human body kaya hindi siya toxic once ingested. Okay, so this is the structure of the reaction of oxidation of propylene glycol with the presence of liver enzyme into a pyruvic acid. Still, the hydroxyl group, once oxidized, will turn into carbonyl group. Okay, and the last important alcohol is the glycerol, having an IUPAC name of 1,2,3 propane triol. This is also known as glycerine, and they are actually often called as the biological antifreeze. So, yung mga fishes and insects in the Arctic areas, northern winters, okay, meron silang nagpo-produce sila ng glycerol para hindi sila mag-freeze. Okay, so this glycerol has been dissolved in their body para ma-lower yung kanilang freezing point ng kanilang mga blood. Okay, glycerol is also used in the pharmaceutical industries for the preparation of skin lotions and soap. For the physical properties of alcohol, it is, according to its structure, it is both polar and non-polar. Polar region niya, polar part niya yung hydroxyl group, and the series of carbon atom is eventually the non-polar group. Okay, so the boiling point of the unbranched alcohol with hydroxyl group on the end of the carbon usually increases, okay, as the length of the carbon chain increases. So if you're going to compare ethyl alcohol having two carbon atoms, okay, versus uh, butanol having four carbon atoms, sabi ng property na to, mas mataas daw yung boiling point ng butanol kasi kaysa sa ethanol kasi nakadepende dun sa length ng carbon chain niya. Okay, so the more carbon atoms there is in a straight chain, alcohol will have the higher boiling point. Okay, alcohols with more than hydroxyl group, so yung mga diols and triols, will have significantly higher boiling point than their monohydroxy counterpart. So, if you're going to have ethanol and being compared to ethane diol, of course, the diol will have the higher boiling point. Okay? Small monohydroxy alcohol are soluble in water. So, yung small hydroxy alcohols like methanol, ethanol, they could be dissolved in water. However, as the carbon chain increases, so habang dumadami yung carbons dun sa alcohol and and beyond 3, their solubility in water rapidly decreases. So, kung pentanol yan, hexanol, so habang tumataas yung bilang ng carbon dun sa alcohol, mas mahirap tunawin. Kasi mas prevalent na yung non-polar regions nila kaysa dun sa polar region hydroxyl. Ang water ay isang polar substance, so kung ano yung mga polar substances, madi-dissolve sa water kasi like dissolves like. So kung mas marami na ang non-polar dito, mas mahirap nang ma-dissolve sa water. Okay? And alcohols are generally prepared aside from fermentation. Okay, they are generally prepared via hydration of alkenes. So we could recall that during hydration of alkenes, the double bond will be broken such that the hydrogen and the hydroxyl group will be accommodated to the carbon atom that originally bears the double bond. So this will now become your alcohol. So ROH. And of course, during hydration, aside from it is just the addition of water, of course, a catalysts are needed in the form of sulfuric acid. Okay? So another method of synthesizing alcohol is the addition of hydrogen to the carbonyl group of the aldehyde and ketone. So hindi lang siya limited sa alkene, rather pwede rin tayong gumamit ng aldehyde and ketone. Okay, for the reaction of alcohol, we have combustion. Of course, all alcohols are flammable, and during combustion of this organic compound, carbon dioxide and water and of course energy will be produced. Bioalcohols in the form of methanol, so may mga bioalcohols tayo. Ibig sabihin, these are alcohols produced via fermentation, or rather, yes, via fermentation of uh, natural resources such as corn, mga starch-filled plants. And this bioalcohol can be used as fuels. Okay, so again, during combustion, they're going to react with carbon dioxide. The hydrocarbon or the alcohol will react with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Okay. We have dehydration reaction. During this reaction, the okay, the carbon to carbon single bond that bears the hydroxyl will now lose the hydroxyl ion and one of the hydrogen. So, kasi dehydration, magtatanggal siya ng water molecule. And water molecule is eventually HOH. So, magtatanggal siya ng hydroxyl group and yung neighboring hydrogen from that neighboring carbon atom to produce water, and that single bond will now be converted to double bond. Kasi nga, just to meet the 4-bond requirement, pag tinanggal mo na itong mga water molecules na to, kailangan niya maging stable at kailangan niya ma-meet yung 4-bond requirement. So, the single bond will then become double bond during dehydration reaction. This dehydration reaction is eventually the opposite of the hydration reaction in alkene actually. Okay, so during the dehydration reaction of an alcohol, we are going now to produce an alkene. So this is the alkene with double bond and a side product of water. Dehydration reaction happens in a hot temperature, 180 degrees Celsius, and with a catalyst in the form of sulfuric acid or H2SO4. So again, dehydration reaction is the removal of water component from that alcohol. So let's have an example. The dehydration of 1-propanol at 180 degrees Celsius with the presence of sulfuric acid will now produce, so this is 1-propanol, will now produce propene. Why propene? Because the hydroxyl group that makes it alcohol will now be removed to form water, as well as one hydrogen coming from the neighboring carbon atom. And with the removal of these water molecules to meet the 4-bond requirement, the carbons involved in the reaction will now form carbon to carbon double bond. So always remember, dehydration of alcohol will produce an alkene and water. So this dehydration reaction is actually an elimination reaction. Elimination reactions are reactions wherein two groups or two atoms on the neighboring carbon atoms are being removed. So nai-eliminate sila. Okay? At kapag nagtanggal ka ng atoms or group of atoms being attached on that carbon atom, yung carbon atom na pinagtanggalan will have now multiple bonds, particularly, ano ba ito may multiple bonds? Double bond. Okay? So, elimination reaction is just the reverse of addition reaction. Okay? So, magproproduce tayo ng alkene. Pero, may possibility na magkaroon ng dalawang product. Dehydration of an alcohol can result in the production of more than one alkene product. Okay. Example, this is 2-butanol. One possible way of producing an alkene could happen on this site. Okay? So the hydrogen will be removed from this carbon number 1 and that carbon number 2. So it will from originally CH3, matatanggal na yung H, so magiging CH2. This CH2OH will then become CH na lang kasi natanggal yung OH. At yung mga natanggal na yan, ito yung water. Okay. With that removal of two atoms or water molecules, double bond will be produced. And of course, itong remaining part, sila lang ito. Okay. And this one would be named as 1-butene. However, it could also be that the 2-butanol will undergo dehydration reaction, pero dito naman, carbon number 2 and carbon number 3. Kanina, 1 and 2. Pero pwede rin na 2 and 3. Okay? The hydroxyl group will be removed, leaving this only CH. The hydrogen will be removed. So these removed atoms will now form water. That one, third carbon atom will remain as CH. The single bond will now turn to become double bond para ma-meet yung 4-bond requirement. And for this second reaction, we are producing 2-butene. So, pwedeng dalawa ang maging product. Okay? Pwedeng dalawang maging product. So, paano natin malalaman kung alin ang prevalent or dominant product during the dehydration of alcohol? Okay? Since 2-butene could produce, 2-butene and 1-butene are being produced in the reaction of or in the dehydration reaction of 2-butanol, we are going to use Zaitsev rule to predict which of the two will be the major product. Anong sabi ni Seitz-Sev? The major product in the intramolecular alcohol dehydration reaction is the alkene with the greatest number of alkyl. Alkyl groups attached to the carbon atoms to the double bond. So, ang magiging dominant daw ay yung butene or alkene na may maraming alkyl group na naka-attach sa double bond. Okay, so tignan natin si 1-butene. This is now the site of reaction. That is the 1 and 2. Okay, so looking at it, we only have how many alkyl groups attached to that double bond? Ito yung alkyl group attached dyan. However, kay 2-butene naman, the site of reaction a while ago is 2 and 3. At kung bibilangin natin ilan ang alkyl groups na naka-attach sa carbon-to-carbon double bond, meron tayong 2. So according to Seitz-Sev, paano natin ma-predict kung alin ang dominant product dito sa dehydration reaction of 2-butanol? We're going to declare it as 2-butene to be the major product according to Seitz-Sev rule. Kasi nga, itong 2-butene, meron siyang 2 alkyl group na naka-attach sa site of reaction. Okay? While as for 1-butene, isa lang. So, ito yan. Mas dominant si 2-butene over 1-butene kasi si 1-butene lang ay may isang alkyl group while as si 2-butene ay may 2. Okay? We also have another reaction, intermolecular alcohol dehydrogenation. So kanina, itong dinascuss natin ay intramolecular. Nung ibig sabihin ng intramolecular, okay, this is an intramolecular. Ibig sabihin, within itself, ang removal ng water. Only one alcohol undergoes the reaction intramolecular dehydrogenation within itself. Siya lang ang na-convert sa alkene. However, for pag inter, ibig sabihin, meron na siyang ibang kasama. 2 molecule na ng alcohol ang involved dito. Intermolecular alcohol dehydration will now produce ether, hindi na alkene, rather ether na. The mechanism of this reaction is that if this is alcohol 1 and this is alcohol 2, okay, so 2 na ang involved na alcohol for this type of dehydration. Okay, so we're going to have the hydroxyl group from the first alcohol will be removed as well as the hydrogen. So yung hydroxyl group na ngayon ang involved. Hydroxyl group from the first alcohol and the hydrogen in the hydroxyl group of the second alcohol will now form the water. And with this open bond, so wala na to. So ang oxygen kailangan niya ng 2 bond requirement. So ito may missing dito kasi nga tinanggal natin ito. So dito ay open na ito because hydroxyl has been removed. So this one will now connect with each other kaya magiging carbon, oxygen, carbon. And this is now the ROR na sinasabi, and that is the general formula for ether. The R represents series of carbon atom and another R is a series of another carbon atom. The identity of this ether, the identity of the alkyl groups in this ether might not be the same or identical. So, depende kung ano yung bilang ng carbon atom dito. Kunyari, 2 sa alcohol 1. Tapos, itong alcohol 2, isa lang. So, ibig sabihin, ang ether na maproproduce will have 2 carbon atoms on this part, so 2 carbon atoms lang yan, kasi 2 lang doon. If, say for example, for that particular alcohol 1, and this one would be only 1. So, pwedeng may mga instances na pwedeng parehas sila, or pwedeng magkaiba. Okay? So, example would be the intermolecular dehydration of ethanol. Okay? Intermolecular dehydration, as dehydration of ethanol. So, we have an ethanol, 2 atoms of ethanol, or 2 molecules of ethanol. The hydroxyl group from the first ethanol will be removed to form water together with that hydrogen there on that hydroxyl group of the second alcohol. So, pag natanggal na itong hydrogen and hydroxyl group, sila ang mag-combine, yung mga naiwan. So, that carbon here will be attached to the oxygen, and then another series of carbon atom. And this structure, kung saan yung oxygen ay nakasandwich sa dalawang series of carbon atom, are known ethers, or ROR. Intermolecular dehydration is eventually an example of a condensation reaction. Pag sinabi natin condensation, 2 molecules combine to form one large molecule. And usually, they are liberating or removing a small molecule in the form of water. So, ito, na-liberate, tinanggal yung water molecule para magsama silang dalawa. And that's a condensation reaction. Okay. Oxidation reaction happens primarily for primary and secondary alcohols only. Pag tertiary, no reaction na. Tertiary alcohol. Okay? So, kanina, once ingested, yung mga alcohol na discuss natin that they will going to become, the hydroxyl will then become carbonyl. Okay? So, for oxidation reaction, so may mga ginagamit tayong oxidizing agent. And this includes potassium permanganate, potassium dichromate, and chromic acid. Okay, so these are the oxidizing agent. So during oxidation, the carbon bearing the hydroxyl group will then become a carbonyl group, or a compound containing carbon oxygen double bond. So C double bond O na instead of COH. Okay? So primary alcohol, once oxidized, will turn into aldehyde. Further oxidation will convert it to carboxylic acid. Secondary alcohol, once oxidized with the presence of mild oxidation agent or oxidizing agent, will turn into ketone. Okay, remember that tertiary alcohol undergoing oxidation will have no reaction. Okay? So, paano natin, elaborate natin? Primary alcohol oxidation produces aldehyde and then furthered into carboxylic acid. The carbon bearing the hydroxyl will turn into a carbonyl group, and that carbonyl group could be further oxidized into a carboxyl group. So example, so ethanol, site of reaction is the CH2OH. That CH2OH will then become C double bond OH. This is a primary alcohol kasi isa lang yung carbon atom na kapitbahay nung carbon atom bearing the hydroxyl. And this is an example of an aldehyde. That still meron yung count ng carbon atom ay parehas pa rin 2. Further oxidation will cause this to become a carboxylic acid. the naming of this aldehyde and naming of this carboxylic acid will be discussed in the further chapters, next chapters. Okay. Okay, then we have secondary alcohol oxidation. This one, so secondary na siya. Meron siyang dalawang carbon atom na neighbor. That carbon atom containing the hydroxyl will then become C double bond O. Still attached pa rin yung series of other carbon atoms. And these are known to be ketone. Ang difference ng aldehyde sa ketone ay the carbonyl group for aldehyde is only attached to one carbon atom and at least meron siyang isang hydrogen. For ketone naman, the carbonyl group should be sandwiched in between two carbon atoms. So that's the main difference of aldehyde and ketone. The ketone could no longer be oxidized, just like, unlike aldehyde na pwede pa siyang maging carboxylic acid. Kasi nga, this hydrogen part of the aldehyde could be oxidized further to become hydroxyl group. And collectively, these are carboxyl. But this carbonyl in the ketone doesn't bear any hydrogen at all. So with that, wala nang ma-oxidize na paglalagyan ng hydroxyl. So stop na dito yung oxidation. These could no longer be further oxidized. And an example of this is this one, 2-propanol. We have 3 carbon atoms. The hydroxyl has been attached on the second carbon atom. Secondary siya kasi itong pinag-attachan niyang carbon atom ay may dalawang carbon atom na neighbor. Oxidation will make this carbon atom bearing the hydroxyl group to become a carbonyl group. Okay, so copy lang yung mga neighboring na carbon atom. And this is a ketone. Okay. Ang pangalan nito particularly ay 2-propanone. Known. 2-propanone. But that would be discussed in the next chapters. And tertiary alcohol doesn't have any hydrogen to be oxidized. So, kasi ang site of reaction is the carbon atom bearing the hydroxyl group. Okay? Hindi na ito pwedeng maging C double bond O kasi nga if you're going to convert that to become C double bond O, hindi na natin sinasatisfy violation na to sa 4-bond requirement kasi meron na siyang magkakaroon siya ng 5 bond. So hindi na pwede. Okay? So walang reaction pagdating sa tertiary alcohol oxidation.